Okay, so let's talk about this weekend's big fight. Of course, Canelo Alvarez versus Jamel Charlo. Undisputed champion versus undisputed champion. Jamel Charlo's, of course, undisputed at light middleweight, stepping up 2 weight classes to fight the current undisputed super middleweight champion in Canelo. Big fight. Has that kind of historical feel to it, at least on paper. It seems like the kind of fight that would have that feel. But this is just my opinion. Is it me, or has this fight been a bit flat on arrival? Doesn't seem like there's much hype or excitement or anticipation surrounding it. Um, I say that obviously I'm based in the UK, so international fights don't typically get the same kind of reception, at least on a mass scale in the UK. But then I don't know. I just think a fight of this magnitude, with everything that's on the line and the kind of dynamic that's at play, surely there should be a bit more intrigue and anticipation. But I don't know. Boxing fans can be picky. Anyway, let's talk about this fight, how I think it unfolds, and we'll come to a prediction. As I say, I've kind of had a little step back from boxing recently. I haven't been in the mix as much as I usually am. But that being said, I feel like I know both fighters well enough whereby I don't have to do a ton of homework to kind of decide my prediction. I like both fighters. I really enjoy watching them. I appreciate both of their styles, particularly Jamel Charlo's. He's a fighter that over the years, over recent years, I've really warmed to just because of what he brings to the ring. I feel like he's a good all-rounder. Not necessarily a master of any one approach, but he can do a little bit of everything. And there's a certain kind of intensity that Jamel Charlo brings to the ring that it's like a suddenness that's quite exciting. And and to be fair to Charlo, he's fought a lot of decent level opposition, and of course he's coming off of back to back fights against Brian Castano, and I feel like that is decent preparation. You know, someone like Castano, someone of his dimensions and the way he approaches boxing, I feel like it is somewhat decent preparation for fighting the Canelo Alvarez. The only thing is, it's the inactivity because the second Brian Castano fight was last May 2022, and before that, the first fight was July 2021. So activity and momentum isn't on Jamel Charlo's side in this fight. That being said, he does have some physical advantages that could be considerable against Canelo Alvarez. He has the height, and I'm pretty sure he has the reach and the arm length. So that should give him some kind of advantage potentially at long range. And we know that Jamel Charlo can move well. He's a very athletic guy, has that suddenness and that athleticism, as well as the technique to probably stay out the way. And I imagine that's probably what he's going to do. Maybe keep this fight at a distance whereby Canelo, being the shorter man with less ring coverage, to use Richard Dwyer's term, Jamel's going to aim to have success at long range, maybe keeping Canelo at arm's length, looking to make him reset constantly, because Canelo, if we cast our minds back a few years, it was clear what his kryptonite was. He was someone who struggled with movers and long range boxers, because Canelo, he's if you look at his body type, I think it has quite a considerable bearing on how he approaches boxing. He isn't the most mobile fighter, especially not back then. He could be quite plodding, but to his credit, over the years, he's addressed those weaknesses, and he's improved his ability to cut off the ring. He's become much more of a dynamic target as he pressures, and he's improved his long range boxing in his own right, and being able to contest with much bigger men. The likes of Sergey Kovalev. And yes, it was a washed up Kovalev, but Kovalev is one of the premier long range boxers of recent years. And Canelo Alvarez, I don't want to say that he was able to figure Kovalev out, but he had the correct approach that negated a large part of Kovalev's long range boxing, and showed that Canelo Alvarez has improved in that regard. So, interesting clash of styles here. I think it pretty much will be Canelo looking to press the issue, looking to pressure, particularly as he gets more comfortable. Jermell Charlo looking to keep it at long range, keep Canelo arm's length, and move around and cover distance in the ring. And I think he will have a decent amount of success doing that, because Jermell Charlo is not someone who you can just bully. You can't just close him down, because he will let shots rip. Jermell Charlo, I feel like his best form of defense is his footwork, but in some regard, and I know this sounds a bit crazy, Jermell Charlo kind of relies on offense for his defense. He likes to stick it on a fighter who gets a bit overzealous. You know, I don't know whether it's an instinctive thing or whether that's a tactical thing. I suspect it's probably a bit of both, but maybe a bit more instinctive, because if you look at the mindset of both the Charlos, they have an intensity. They have like a viciousness to them. So I think when they're in the heat of the action, part of them is almost compelled to engage and throw shots back. And we've seen that work for Jermell Charlo, but also against him, particularly in those Brian Castano fights, because I think it was, I can't remember which fight it was. I think it was the first fight. Jermell Charlo had success trading left hooks with Castano, but also got caught himself and rocked badly by Castano. So it's a double-edged sword there. I'm not entirely sure if he can get away with that against Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez, what I've seen of him over the years, he's not the kind of fighter to really punch with you. I'm sure he could, but he is someone who he likes to... I'm not sure if he really likes to take that risk, because Canelo Alvarez is quite a defensively astute fighter. And that's part of what's difficult about beating him as well. Just on a tangent, is Canelo Alvarez has the kind of nightmarish combination of a really good chin and quite good defense. So it's like, it's hard enough to land on him as it is. And even if you do, it's unlikely that your punch is going to have that big an effect, because he's got quite a sturdy set of whiskers. So Jermell Charlo, I'm not entirely sure if he will... how can I say this? I think he could get away with landing some considerable offense, particularly early against Canelo Alvarez when he's fresh, maybe before Alvarez has got the confidence to come forward with authority, because you do see that in some of Canelo Alvarez's fights, particularly when he's fighting a mover. He will come forward, he will push the issue, but not as much. I feel like he maybe likes to see a bit more of what you're going to offer, maybe get a feel for what kind of offense you bring as an opponent. And then as the fight progresses, he closes the distance down a bit more, gets a bit more physical, particularly if he backs you up to the ropes. And I have to be honest, like, I see how Charlo could frustrate Canelo with the movement, with the long-range boxing, but I'm not sure if it's going to be anything that Canelo hasn't seen before. And on top of that, Charlo, what I've seen is, and this is part of what makes him exciting, is sometimes he has these bursts of offense where he feels like he's got you out of position, and he'll come back with some very fast and explosive counters, but it's a bit wild, and he can kind of swing himself off balance, lose his positioning, be out of position and be there to be countered. And we know Canelo Alvarez, he can be pretty sharp on the counter, and he's a very correct puncher, and because of that technique and because of his strength, he can inflict a lot of damage very quickly. And I just think, that's... I'm not sure how long Charlo will be able to stay disciplined and not have one of those bursts where he kind of loses his positioning and gets caught. And so, if I'm looking at how this fight unfolds, I think early on Charlo will have success because he's a bit more active, a bit more accurate, and Canelo's just maybe conceding a little bit. Coming into the middle rounds, I think Canelo warms into the fight, but Charlo might even still be ahead at this point. And it looks like, okay, if Charlo can just see this fight out, he might be able to get the W here. But I do think as we go from mid to late, I think Canelo Alvarez gets closer. I think his output will probably increase. I think he's going to start getting Charlo into positions where Charlo's defense fails him a little bit. Maybe he's against the ropes or in the corner, and the head movement just isn't enough. because I'm not sure if head movement's really Charlo's forte. I think it is more so the footwork and the distance that he uses for defense. And I think as soon as Canelo starts to land regularly on Charlo in those later rounds after the halfway point, I feel like we're going to really see the damage accumulate on Jermell Charlo. In similar fashion to the Caleb Plant fight, where Caleb Plant started well, looked like he'd really got into a rhythm early, and it was somewhat like frustrating Canelo Alvarez a bit, maybe even ahead on the cards. But as soon as Canelo started hitting regularly, landing regularly, he kind of unraveled a little bit. I suspect we see a similar thing here. And I think we're probably going to see Canelo Alvarez get the stoppage victory in the later rounds. I'm thinking 10 or 11. That's just kind of what my gut's telling me. I see Charlo having success, like decent success as well. But I just don't know if he's going to be able to keep Canelo honest and kind of halt his forward movement. Because that's the thing about Canelo, is he's not the kind of guy to rush forward. He does it subtly, but he does so with defensive responsibility. So it's difficult to catch him out. I do think that Charlo's athleticism, particularly, and his size will score him some offense, particularly at long range. But I think Canelo's eyes will probably just be a bit too good. He'll probably start to get some counters in, even if they're just single shots. I just don't know if Charlo can afford to take them. Even though I do think Charlo is sturdy. I don't think he's chinny by any means, but he is stepping up 2 weight classes. And I think this is, I think super middleweight is where we see the best Canelo Alvarez in terms of weight. Although I will concede, I think Canelo Alvarez has definitely peaked in my opinion. I don't think he's going to get any better than this. So I think it is a steady decline from now on. But then, is Jermell Charlo really in his peak? Because the inactivity's there. Fighting twice in 2 years, 2 years and 2 months, like it's not great, and that's a common theme amongst PBC fighters. But that's how I see it going. I'm pretty happy with that prediction. I think Canelo Alvarez gets the stoppage victory late in the fight, rounds 10 or 11. Maybe we see the corner of Jermell Charlo throwing the towel. And don't get me wrong, Charlo winning this fight wouldn't be the strangest thing I've ever seen in boxing, if I'm being honest. I just don't see it being that realistic. So if I'm trying to make a logical prediction, I'm just going to go with Canelo Alvarez. And it makes a change from Canelo on points. I think he gets the stoppage in this one. Of course, there are other dynamics, like Canelo's first fight of his 3-fight deal with PBC. Does that play a role? The politics? I'm not sure, because if he's locked into a 3-fight deal and Jermell Charlo is a PBC fighter, I don't think Canelo Alvarez can beat Charlo in an escape PBC if he's locked in for a 3-fight deal. And hopefully this 3-fight deal culminates in a David Benavidez fight, because even though I'm picking Canelo, and I give Canelo a lot of respect for what he's done, he hasn't been too enthusiastic about fighting Benavidez, and he's come up with some BS reasons as to why, which, that stinks. So it doesn't matter who you are or what titles you hold. If you do something that we don't agree with as boxing fans, you're going to get called out on it, if you're an objective channel like me. Anyway, that's my prediction for this one. Canelo Alvarez getting the stoppage, rounds 10 or 11. Jermell Charlo falling short in what is a probably career-defining fight for him. Anyway, leave me your comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you think of this one. Do you agree with my assessment? Do you disagree? And state your case why.